If you're interested to do a simple detox at your home, then in this episode we are going to share about the one medicinal meal from Ayurveda to do a home detox. Hi, this is Zia and this is
Kumana, and welcome to Holistic Nomads TV,
where ancient wisdom and modern science can help you to have more clarity and energy in your life. We have talked about this one medicinal meal from Ayurveda that is used for the detox program, and that is called Kitchari. But we haven't really go through the details. On the previous episode, we put the link below on how to individualize this Kitchari meal for Vata, Pitta, Kapha. But as I mentioned, we haven't really go through the detail because it's actually very medicinal, very important. So that's why we cover it one whole video dedicated to this Kitchari. So before we go through that, talking about Kitchari, can you explain a little bit more about soupy meal? Because I remember you mentioned a lot about the importance and the benefit of soupy meal in healing. Can you explain more on that?
Yeah, in a simple context, it doesn't matter where we are in the world, all traditional medicine systems have some form of soupy broth type meal that they'll use to, one, help detoxify the body, and two, to make it easier to digest certain things, especially the heavier, harder to digest things, grains and some vegetables. When you cook them into a soupy broth, a lot of the minerals and things go into the liquid, and it makes it easy for the body to absorb and utilize, and much less chance of having some half-digested byproduct. So right around the world, soup is the medicinal meal. If the body's ever a little bit out of balance, then you can come back towards soup to really help the digestive system and allow it to be easier to return to balance. So Kitchari is one of these soupy type dishes that's done in the Indian tradition, and it's generally some form of legume, some form of rice that's boiled together with liquid to make quite a soupy consistency, and then that could either be eaten as a side dish to many meals in India, or it could be eaten by itself as a medicinal meal that's very easy to digest.
So Kitchari is a soup and particularly come from India, would you say?
Kitchari is a soup coming from India,
Cool.
half legumes, half rice.
Half legume, half rice. Why needs to have this half-half ratio, or at least there's legumes and rice? Why not just rice? Why it is both?
This is because the protein component of the legumes makes it more balanced long term to be able to have some form of protein. It means that someone could fast or live off this for a longer period of time. If it was just rice, then we'd have a much lower protein content that's there, making it less suitable for a long-term fast.
What's the ideal rice? Because there's so many different varieties of rice, right? So what would be the ideal one?
In India, they would be using Basmati rice, and there's a few reasons for this. One of them is that it's a very low glycemic index. It has the lowest glycemic index out of all the white rices, as far as I'm aware, and this means that it doesn't spike the blood sugar levels as much. Two is that it gives just enough carbohydrate to stimulate the digestive fires and the metabolism, but it's a very easy to digest rice, meaning it doesn't have much of this glutinous component, a sticky component that makes it stick together and make more work for the digestive system. It's a very fluffy rice that spreads out throughout the system. And then also Basmati rice still has some minerals left inside it, whereas most white rices, they've taken a lot of the minerals out, but the blanching process that they do to Basmati rice pushes the minerals from the husk into the white grain of the rice. So it means there's still more nutrition left than many other white rices as well. So Basmati rice would be the preferred rice if you're using this as a medicinal based Kitchari.
Cool. So that's the first part, that is grains with rice, that is Basmati rice, and the other one is the legumes. What would be the ideal legumes to be used?
This really depends on the person, yet within an Ayurvedic medicinal type Kitchari, they're generally going to use mung beans, and they don't just use mung beans where they've got the green on the outside, the husk. They use what's called a split yellow mung bean, because when we take the husk off the outside, it's much easier to digest, and because many people can get gas and aggravated by legumes, split yellow mung bean is the least likely to form gas out of all of the legumes. So split yellow mung would be the most medicinal source there. It also has a little bit of protein that's in there, and specifically the protein is one called L-glutamine. And L-glutamine is the same amino acid, the same protein that's needed to rebuild the digestive lining. The microvilli, the little finger-like projections that come out along the whole digestive lining, and they make it easier for us to absorb our nutrition. They're made from the amino acid L-glutamine. And it's very common that inflammatory processes, these microvilli get ripped off, they get torn up, and our enzymes live in there. They're very important for digestive function. And when we eat things like mung beans, we go a fast on that for a period of time, easy to digest, and it allows us to get the building blocks we need to make those microvilli again.
What will be the other ingredients that is needed to make kitchari beside grain and legumes?
They would also include some form of fat or an oil. So now we have carbohydrates, proteins and fat. In India, they're generally going to be using ghee, yet I also wouldn't be opposed to using olive oil. I sometimes try to move away from the animal product fats at certain times, and olive oil is a great alternative to that. A lot of people say you can't cook with olive oil. I don't believe it's true. The science shows that you can cook with olive oil up to a certain degree, and the degree for olive oil, it's not exact in my mind now, it's somewhere between 150, 160 degrees Celsius before it goes into its smoke point. And if you're boiling with liquid like you would be in a kitchari, you've got water that's present, then the water will never go above 100 degrees. So as long as there's liquid present while you're boiling, the olive oil won't go above 100 degrees, it won't denature. That's why olive oil is used in so many different sauces throughout Italy. As long as there's some tomato liquid inside there, then you could use olive oil and cook, and it's still going to be quite healthy. It hasn't denatured, it's not going to be challenging to the system. So ghee or olive oil might be my two sort of fairly universal choices that everyone will be able to digest and not have so much of a challenge with. So then we've got proteins, fats and carbohydrates, and then our fourth thing to include there is going to be some form of spices. Some spices that are very easy to digest, that could be used by lots of people, so there's very little chance of reactivity. And I like cumin, coriander and fennel as my three favorites there. It's a tridoshic mix, meaning generally good for all people. One's good for vata, one's good for pitta, one's good for kapha. We mix these, cumin, coriander, fennel, as the base portion, and then we may mix in other spices to make it a little bit more suited for each dosha. I love to put some ginger in there. A little bit of grated fresh ginger is a great option, and turmeric as well also works well in kitchari.
So I remember during your Vitality and Ayurvedic Detox retreat, you often recommend people to take a different parts of the kitchari, because everyone is different obviously, and that needs individualization. So when we make let's say one pot of the kitchari, some people you recommend to take just the top, the watery part, and some people on the bottom. So is there any differences on the consistency of when people make it at home, on how thick and how watery that will be, and what will be the effects for the health?
In Ayurveda, they say there's 4 different types of kitchari based on its consistency. The first one is a kitchari that has the tiniest amount of rice and legumes, so small that basically you're just having the liquid. You're boiling that for a period of time to the point where it pretty much dissolves and it's just a liquid portion with no solid that's in there at all. It's just like a clear soup, but it's not clear because the minerals and the other things have dissolved into the water. And then the second one is where there is some solid pieces in there. You can just see there's an occasional piece of rice and a few bits of legume, but it's still predominantly liquid. Then the third one is where it's mostly solid, but there is still maybe a quarter liquid. It's still fairly liquid amongst the portion. And the fourth one is where it's fairly solid and the liquid is now absorbed into the rice and the mung beans. So with these 4 different consistencies, they're mainly used depending upon the person's digestive fire, how hungry their appetite gets, and how much you really want to stimulate the detoxification process for the person. So for me, as an example, I have a very thin body type, So you'd want to be very aware of how much you stimulate the detoxification process. When we stimulate detoxification, we generally stimulate the breaking down of our tissues and cells. So you'd want to say, oh, okay, he's a thin body type, so therefore he's probably going to need at the thicker end of the spectrum. And then the second variable I looked at there was how strong is their appetite. And for me, my appetite is extremely strong. I need to eat 3 meals a day at the specific times. So even if I'm going through a detox, I still might be having the thickest portion of the Kitchari, a tiny little bit of that soupy section there, but that's what I need, 3 meals a day, and that's already going to stimulate my body to detoxify. If I have that 3 meals a day, I'm still hungry for a meal before the next meal comes. And I'm using lots of liquids between the meals to get that digestive fire going. Whereas someone with a much larger body type and someone with a lower appetite, they may just be having just the broth, just the water. So it's almost like a water fast for them, but their water fast has a tiny bit of minerals in it, a tiny bit of protein in it, a tiny bit of fats, but it's so small that it's just enough to keep their fire and metabolism working, but not enough for their body to live off. Now they're chewing into their own tissues to maintain that detoxification effect.
So let's go a little bit deeper to using Kitchari as a detox meal. What will be the variation if we want to have Kitchari detox and using them as a meal?
Yeah. So one of the ways to look at this is in relation to the digestive fire and whether or not there's a lot of body build. Just as I've just come through with that last window of where we're looking at, okay, how much will we make the Kitchari watery or thick? We will also look at this when we're looking at a detox. And this is going to define how many times we might need to eat over the day and how much we might need to eat. So for me, I'm going to need a much bigger bowl because I'm in that window and I'm going to use the thicker portion. So I'm going to use a fairly bigger bowl, at least 2 of my full cupped hand size bowl, and I'm going to eat that 3 times a day. If I'm still feeling very hungry or deficient, or I'm going to continue this for a longer period of time, meaning more than 3 days time, then I might start adding in extra of steamed vegetables or other things there to make sure my body doesn't go into deficiency. My favorite is going to be pumpkin and broccoli. I'm going to use pumpkin more when there's vata and pitta type things going on, and I'm going to use broccoli more when there's pitta and kapha type things, meaning pitta can go, great, pumpkin and broccoli, let's go for both. Yeah? And because we cook those vegetables separately, either steamed or boiled, I prefer steamed in this case, and then we add them to the Kitchari, they're much less likely to have the same sort of, oh, I need to eat more, I need to eat more. Having that extra vegetable will be more of a grounding component in the meal there. So that's one side. We've got a thinner body type that really doesn't need to detoxify as much and their appetite's very strong. On the other side, where we've got a larger body type, they need to detoxify more, their appetite is not quite as strong, then we could take it down to first thing in the morning, breakfast might be 1 ladle of the watery broth, yeah? Just enough to really get a little bit of minerals in and not really giving the body a lot of food. Drinking plenty of good herbal medicine teas right up until lunch, and then lunch might be their thicker portion. Now for this person, because they're in the larger category, they can detoxify easier, that still might be 1 ladle of something that's sort of a bit more thick and has got some substance to it, and it's still in the runny area. It's still in like a number 2 of predominantly runny fluid with a little bit of solids. And then they test, they see if they can go through the night with just broth again. So only the lunchtime where they had a bit more solid. And this, in the detoxes that I lead, is led day to day. I'm constantly checking in with people morning, night, and at the meal times, and I'm seeing where is their body at? Do they need to increase or decrease here? So if you're doing this at home, it's a little bit of a feel into your body trial and error. And the biggest recommendation here is if any major symptoms start to come up, then you need to be checking in with a healthcare practitioner straight away. If it's a very mild symptom that's coming up, then you probably can move through the detox by yourself. Yet with every one of these cases, if you have medications that you're taking regularly, if you have some major disease, then you probably need to consult with a doctor before you've even gone into this, so that you know, oh yes, it's okay for me to detoxify for a period of time.
So as always, this information that we give is educational in nature without understanding your individuality, which is what Ayurveda really big about, is to adjust that to your individuality. We will always recommend you to consult with practitioners and to see how you can adjust best doing this Ayurvedic Kitchari meal and detox for you. Or you can join Kimana's Vitality Now Ayurvedic Detox Retreat in Australia or in Bali. You can check out the website vitalitynow.co, and there will be a lot of information there on how you can join. Anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, just that if you want to look at individualizing Kitchari a little bit more, then check out one of the previous episodes. We'll link it up in the notes below. It explains different spices that could be used for the different doshas there. And we'll give you a recipe on how to make a home detox Kitchari. Now the recipe that we're giving is used for the Vitality Now detox. So it's a larger recipe that's designed to make a really big pot for a lot of people. So you might need to change the ratios down to suit a little bit more of a home use. Yet it's got some of the condiments that we would use and fresh coriander. And here we've just talked about making the Kitchari, but for each dosha in that recipe, it has some ways to add condiments and individualize a little bit, make it a bit more specific for you. Hope this has really been helpful to you. I know Kitchari is an amazing meal that can really help us detoxify in a way that doesn't mean the digestive fire goes to sleep. We really need to be aware of that. In many fasting type programs, the digestive fire ends up turning off, and then we have to use things to get it going again. Whereas a Kitchari type fast enables the digestive fire to really still be strong and metabolizing things well. So I hope you take advantage of using Kitchari for your detoxes at home, and check in with a professional if you need help with anything. Until next time, all the best.
Now, theory without practice is wasteful, because hearing leads to forgetting, teaching leads to remembering, and applying leads to mastering. That's why we will encourage you to leave a comment below and share one learning insight from this video. Also, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you will be the first to hear about our future educational videos. And for more resources on health and healing, check out our website holisticnomads.com. There you will find articles, quizzes on Ayurveda, loads of free downloads, and of course our future events and courses. Thank you so much for watching. We hope it's been beneficial for you. Hope to see you next week. Bye! Hi, this is Zia, and this is...
Let's study.